Oh my gosh, it's Monday, it's Sine Die. We can do way better than that. Good morning. That's what I'm talking about. At this time, the hour of convening has arrived and the Senate will come to order. This time I would ask that all unauthorized persons exit our beautiful chamber. And it is with great respect I get to honor one last time and recognize the distinguished senator from Chickamauga who hopefully tells us all about those beautiful cattle in your front pasture.
Thank you, Mr. President. It is an honor to be here one last time. It is bittersweet, and I look forward to this day and regret the ending, but be okay with it. And you're right, leaving Northwest Georgia today, had a mist along the meadow, cattle in there. We have a new calf, too, so we have it. His new name is Lee Anderson. And we have bear grousing around in the mountain that they were burned out recently.
You've got bears.
8 bear. One they estimated 750 pounds. So we'll be cautious. Yeah, y'all come up and see me now. You hear? Anyway, a couple of things of history, Mr. President. My last day in 1841, U.S. President William Henry Harrison dies in office from pneumonia. He serves the shortest time of any president. Also, in 1984, United States President Ronald Reagan calls for an international ban on chemical weapons. And we see where we are today. And a senator from the 46 told me it's the World Rat Day. So we look forward to that. And Mr. President, with true regrets, been my last day, but with honor, the journal's been read and found to be correct. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your service and friendship along the way, and it has truly been fun to recognize you first and foremost each and every day. Thank you. Is there objection to dispensing with the reading of the journal? The chair hears none, and the reading of the journal is dispensed with. Is there objection to the confirmation of the journal? The chair hears none, and the journal is confirmed. Ms. Secretary, will you please read first reader of Senate, House bill, or resolution, please?
Senate Resolution 851 by Senators Jones of the 10th and others, a resolution recognizing April 4, 2022 as celebration of organized labor in Georgia Day and for other purposes.
Rules.
That completes the order, Mr. President.
The chair recognizes the senator from the 53rd.
Mr. President, I would like to approach the podium, please.
The chair recognizes the senator from the 53rd to approach the rostrum.
Thank you, Mr. President. You know, this beautiful chamber is full of tradition. And one that we started with you is throwing the first pitch of the last day. So with no more to say, please welcome the pitcher/catcher from Georgia Tech, Ben King, and the Lieutenant Governor.
Every year, this is the most nerve-wracking thing that I do. Why is everyone scooting back from the right over there? Little arm side run. Here we go. Give me that ball. Give me that ball. There we go.
You know he did that on purpose for attention on the last day.
Well, that didn't go according to plan. This 47 is starting to wear on me. All right, it's now time for a morning roll call. It is now time for a morning roll call. Are there any motions to excuse? Chair recognizes his good friend, the senator from the 33rd.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good morning, y'all. It's an honor and a privilege to be able to make my last roll call with the Lieutenant Governor. And I want to add that it's been a pleasurable 2 years working together, and I wish you the best in your journeys. But to the business of the people, I ask for unanimous consent to excuse the senators from the 17th and the 22nd for business outside the Capitol. Sine die, y'all.
It's been an honor to serve alongside you two, and the chair, without objection, excuses the senators from the 17th and the 22nd. The chair recognizes the good senator from the 8th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask for unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 45th for business inside the Capitol.
Without objection, the senator from the 45th is excused. The chair recognizes the senator from Forsyth County.
Good morning to my neighborly president. I ask unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 28th.
Without objection, the senator from the 28th is excused. Are there any additional motions to excuse? Chair recognizes the senator from the 4th.
Yes, sir. I'd like to excuse the senator from the 3rd for business inside the Capitol.
Without objection, the senator from the 3rd is excused. Any additional motions to excuse? The chair sees none. The secretary will call roll. Senators, signify your presence by voting the yea switch. The secretary will unlock the machine. All right, it's now time for a morning devotional, and this one's extremely special to me. It's now time for a morning devotional. I'd ask that all senators take your seats, cease all audible conversations, and doorkeepers deadbolt the doors. I'd like to lead us in our Pledge of Allegiance today and have the great opportunity to introduce our chaplain of the day. Will you please join me in honoring our flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now the Georgia flag. I pledge allegiance to the Georgia flag and to the principles for which it stands, wisdom, justice, moderation. Well, it gives me great honor to introduce to you our chaplain of the day. Andy Stanley is with us here, and many of you have either been in a part of one of his services, online, podcasts, books. He's got an incredible reputation, and Andy's a big part of my story, and the North Point Church, North Point community has been a big part of my story. It goes back 10 years, 10 plus years. I've actually wanted to bring Andy Stanley in as the chaplain of the day as a House rep, but, you know, he's a busy guy. I didn't necessarily want to bother him and get on his schedule, and then as lieutenant governor, same thing. I just kind of felt like, he had a lot to do, and maybe it wasn't, worthwhile to come down here. But then Wes Cantrell over in the House had Andy Stanley as the chaplain of the day a few weeks ago in the House, and I said, here's my chance. And so I shot him a quick text, and within minutes he replied back. And so it really, truly is an honor for me because Andy is a big part of my personal story, big part of my political story. A few years ago, a good friend of mine, Brandon Hensley, invited me to go to a church. Brandon and I played baseball together at Georgia Tech, And we were great friends playing. He's a few years older than me. And so a long time goes past, and we don't really see each other, but we both showed up in the same coaches meeting to coach our kids. And out of nowhere, after a few days, a few dinners and whatnot, he invited my wife and I to go to church with him and his wife. And we went to this church where they proclaimed to be the church of the unchurched, right? And on the surface, that doesn't really sound very holy or very spiritual. But there was something about that church of the unchurched that just struck a chord with me and my wife. It just was the right spot at the right time for us. Now, we were one of those very blessed Christians, right? We weren't showing back up in church because of some major drama or trauma, right? There wasn't a pending divorce or bankruptcy. We were just there because a good friend invited us to walk into a church. And it was the right time and the right moment for the Duncans. And as we started to unpack what this church for the unchurched was, it was just this simple, crisp, clean delivery of what the gospel really was. And it comes down to one word, it's love. Not love the person that looks like you or acts like you or votes like you or talks like you or works like you, but just love. And how you can get better at that. And none of us are perfect at love, certainly me included. But then there was a lot more about the church of the unchurched. There was this thing called small groups, right? Church is better done in circles than rows, and that sounds like a good marketing message. But if you actually take the time to go with your spouse, make time on your calendar on a Wednesday or Thursday night, you take 2 hours and you unpack whether a book of the Bible or a marital devotional or just spend time as a small group. It just means so much more. And then our kids got to experience what small groups meant. Somebody taking the time out of their life on Sundays to be able to sit there and pour into your kids, and then on Wednesdays maybe take them out for an early breakfast. Life is better in circles than rows. And then this big idea that I think has really changed my life but also changed Georgia's direction is this program that we have called Be Rich, right? Once again, great marketing slogan. But if you dig into what Be Rich is, it's about this big idea about it's not how much you get, but it's how much you give, right? Have you ever felt better than when you give somebody something? And so Be Rich is this program that's not about making the church make the headlines. It's about making the community stronger. And so this big idea of trying to understand and identify who's the best in breed, who's the best person, what's the best group in the community that works with addiction recovery or transitional out of incarceration or foster care or adoption or hunger or homelessness. You name the issue that we face. How do we gather the resources, the money, the time, the prayer, the community service around those individual groups to not get the credit for it, but to truly make them better? And it was one midweek where our small group signed up to serve food at a food pantry just a few miles from my house. Here I live in Forsyth County, maybe one of the more wealthy counties in all of the state. I had no idea there was a food pantry 5 miles from my house and just right down the road. I had no idea that when that door opened up at 5 o'clock to serve food, there would be hundreds of people wrapped around the building just trying to get dinner for their kids. And so it instilled in me this mindset when I was sitting in the house, God bless you, of how do we empower the community? And it really was the fundamental reasons around the rural hospital tax credit. It's really the fundamental reasons around the foster care tax credit and now the less crimes tax credit is how do we empower communities to make a difference? And to me, it has changed the direction of my life, and I think it's changed the direction of Georgia. So without any further ado, and I could have gone on for hours and hours and hours and talking about Andy's background and his success. He has got every accolade possible. He's countless numbers of books. He leads an entire organization called North Point Ministries that's all over the country, if not the world. But I walk into church every Sunday, and it's just such a powerful. My wife sometimes I'll tell her that it's a 2 ice bag Sunday. One, the message is so deep and complex. I need an ice bag for my brain, but then I need an ice bag for my shin because he kicks me right square in the shin on Sunday mornings. But so we're going to break I say break the rules. We're going to break the tradition. Over in the house, when he came over there, they made this big to-do that you couldn't actually stand up and clap for him when you introduce the pastor. And I checked with the Secretary of the Senate, and it's actually not a rule. It's just a tradition. So I'm going to ask this body that when I introduce Andy Stanley that we all stand up and welcome him to our Senate chambers. With that, I'd like to present to you Andy Stanley.
Wow. I should just stop right there. That's very kind, Jeff. So it is an honor to be here, and as I told the other side 3 weeks ago, I certainly have no business telling you how to do your jobs because I've never done your job and can't imagine. I can imagine it, but I certainly don't know the pressure you live with. And I'm certainly not a politician, and I know about as much about politics as the average American. But since Jeff invited me to speak and didn't tell me what to talk about, I just thought I would just make some stuff up. So this week I got a letter. It's kind of a letter in the mail. It's really a political flyer, and our mailboxes are about to be full of these things. So I just brought one with me and decided to read parts of it. I won't tell you who it's from. There were just two parts that I thought would kind of get us started. It says, this is the first line of this political kind of ad. Everybody knows. Well, you know you're in trouble already, right? What does everybody know? Everybody knows Democrats cheat, lie, and steal to win. Everybody knows that. Then I'm going to go down and read this part. This is amazing. I'm sorry our governor isn't here to brag on him. This is remarkable. Brian Kemp let us down like few politicians in the country could even think of doing. And now look at what's happening to our country with Ukraine, Taiwan, inflation, gas prices, high taxes, and our totally open southern border. So I just wanted to congratulate the governor of the state of Georgia for having that much impact all around the world. That is absolutely incredible, and of course, it's absolutely ridiculous. So, I have a dream. Now, Dr. King had a really big dream. I just have a little itty-bitty dream, and we should remember Dr. King today. I was reminded this morning when I got up that it was 54 years today that he was taken from us on this very date. But he had a big dream. I just have a little dream, so I'm just going to read you my little dream because you are the folks who could actually make my little dream come true. So my little dream starts like this. I dream of a day when our state leadership wouldn't dream of associating themselves with, much less putting their name on fear-mongering, dishonest, insulting documents such as this one. And I dream of a day when our state leadership has more respect for Georgians than to insult us with mailers of this nature. And I dream of a day when consultants and PR firms are dismissed, shown to the door for even suggesting such insulting language. And I dream of a day when Georgians see this kind of thing at the mailbox and they say, not having it, not falling for it, and not voting for it. And I dream of a day when our state leadership doesn't need to create an enemy of the other party in order to lead. A day when clear-eyed vision for our amazing state is enough. Because I love our state. I don't want to live anywhere else. And our state is a great state. I mean, we know it's great because oftentimes when you say great, you're comparing to other things and compared to a lot of other states. It's a fabulous state. But what if Georgia became an amazing state? And I can't do that. I just get to vote for the choices you toss up, right? But what if we decided, what if you decided, what if the folks on the other side of this building decided, we're just going to do things differently? And not only are we not going to mail out this kind of garbage, but we're going to call each other out and hold each other accountable when we see it happening. Now, when I say things like that, I know that if you're thinking this, I understand. Andy, you don't really know how the game is played, and you're very naive. And maybe both of those are true. Regarding the game, I think the political game is played however the folks in this room and on the other side decide to play it. There are no written rules. You decide how the political game is played. And what if you just decided we're going to change those rules and we're going to call each other out and hold each other accountable when somebody does these boneheaded things and makes these ridiculous claims and puts their names on things they didn't even write? I mean, isn't that the state you want your kids and your grandkids to grow up in? And I would imagine, I don't know any of you, I would imagine when you got into doing this, that was your aspiration. And then you got into the middle of it and realized you're playing a game that's a different game than you got into by a set of rules that you had to learn along the way, and somebody's told you can't win unless you do it this way. But maybe that could change. And maybe it changes in the state of Georgia. And maybe you decide to change those rules. As a voter, I can't decide what the rules are. We're just forced to endure the competition the way it's set up. So just change the rules, and it's not complicated. Of course, I'm a pastor, so I can just leave you with this. It's very simple. You've heard this before. I'll go slow. It's do unto others as you would have others do unto you, someone famously said. Or say about others in a tone that you would want others to say about you. And don't put up with anybody putting words in your mouth to the contrary. In terms of this being a naive notion, it is not naive. Let me tell you what's naive. Naive is a young black man making a name for himself in the relative safety of Boston University and Harvard, thinking he could leave the Northeast to come to the South and make a difference, return to the South to do something about the racism that had plagued and defined the South for decades. Now that was naive. But Dr. King did, and he made a difference. And he has a statue on the mall. And he did it with vision, not simply demonizing everybody who stood against him, even though I don't think any of us would argue with the fact that some of those folks had to be demons or were certainly demon-possessed. But he just took the high road. And that's why he made a difference. And in some ways, he's not just a model for people on both sides of the political aisle. He's a model for every American. I was so moved when the first time I read Letter from a Birmingham Jail, when he talked about standing in the middle. And in his case, that he stood in the middle of three parties. There's a group that wanted him to be more violent and protest at night. You know far more about this than I do. There was a group that said, just go back to Boston, get your education. This is not your fight. And then there was a third group that had a completely different agenda. And he talked about when you stand in the middle, you get shot at it from all directions. But the moment you leave the middle, you leave the arena where changes are made, where the mess can be addressed, where progress is made. And you know that because you're not extremist, and you know what it means to move toward the middle, but not simply to reach across the aisle, but to get in the middle. That's where the problems are solved. And that's why you got into this. I know it is, even though I don't know you personally. So in so many ways, he's a model for all of us in that regard. I'll tell you what else is naive. This is my area. What's naive is a first century Galilean day laborer standing up basically in Syria, a gazillion miles away from Jerusalem, announcing to a bunch of 18-year-old and 20-year-olds that he was going to start a movement that was going to change the world, and neither their death nor his death would stop it. That was naive. But Jesus of Nazareth and the teaching of Jesus of Nazareth shaped Western civilization. And like you and Dr. King, he stood between two extraordinarily powerful movements, the Temple and the Roman Empire. And he just disturbed both by refusing to get in bed with or to get in the bucket with either side. And he's worshiped by 2/3 of the world's population. He's the one who introduced this language that just because someone considers you their enemy, you are not required to return the favor. What if that characterized politics in the state of Georgia? Georgia wouldn't just be great. Georgia could become amazing. So Dr. King has a statue on the mall. Jesus of Nazareth shapes Western civilization with his teaching. So I think they were on to something. I think you can't argue against the fact that what they had in common and the stance they took is a model for all of us, a model for progress, a model for love of people, a model for, as I tell our congregation all the time, hey, what's best for people is what's best. And we may disagree on what's best for people, but we agree that what's best for people is what's best. What's best for residents of the state of Georgia, that's what's best. And we may disagree, and you do disagree on what's best for the residents, but there's so much common ground. And if we could take maybe a little bit different stance, a little bit different tone, it may make a huge difference. And I know. The challenge for you is, yeah, but if I go first and the other person doesn't follow suit, I'll lose. That's a risk that perhaps you have to take. But speaking on behalf of a lot of average Georgians, we would love for these next few months to have a different tone because the leaders of our state came together and decided we're not going to do it the way we've always done it. There are no rules other than the rules we establish and the habits we've created, and perhaps the habits that we should break. So this will require a great deal of maturity, a great deal of personal security, and a whole lot of self-control to lead like that or to run for office like that. It will require for you to love our state more than you love your party or your political career. And I know that's easy for me to say. But once upon a time, you weren't doing this. You were doing something else. And in some capacity, you felt called to this. Either called to this, like Jeff would say, he felt like God said, you got to do this. Or you may have just felt called because of the urgency of the situation. Or there was a problem that needed to be solved or a question that needed to be answered. But something moved you from whatever it was you were doing before into this. And it was to make a difference. And I think if you step back into that moment in time in your life and what you were thinking and what you were feeling, there in that moment were those pure values and that pure motive and that thing that was about progress, not simply demonizing the other side or your opponent so that you could win. It really wasn't even about you winning, was it? It was about the state winning. So just do that again. Let's just all do that again. If we do, Georgia will be everything Georgia could be. Will be amazing. So if you choose the more excellent way, our state will become a more excellent state. It'll be better than great. It will be amazing. I'd love to pray for you. Heavenly Father, it's always easier to say things like this than to do it. It's always easier to commit to things like this than to figure out the way forward. But would you please give us eyes to see and ears to hear and the courage to do that thing that once upon a time, it's what moved us to get into this realm to begin with. So do what perhaps we consider impossible. Give us the courage to believe in what at this point may seem naive. And give us the courage to leverage our influence, to change the game, to change the way it's done for the sake of this state, for the sake of the United States, and who knows, maybe for the sake of the world. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you so much for allowing me to come today.
All right, the Senate will come back to order. Are there any unanimous consents? That sounded like an objection from the Stricklands back there. Does any senator wish to rise on a point of personal privilege? The chair would like to recognize a senator from the 36th for the purpose of introducing us to our doctor of the day.
Thank you, Mr. President. A pastor and a doctor who are both blessing us with their gifts today. I'm so happy to introduce Dr. Florence LaCroix. Dr. LaCroix is our doctor of the day. She served as an anesthesiologist for 33 years and continues her practice at Northside Riverdale Outpatient Imaging Center. Her residency at Vanderbilt Medical Center was completed where she was on faculty there and at the University of Connecticut Health Center and Emory University Hospital. And her research focus was on acute lung injury and asthma. Then she became a private practitioner for 23 years at Wellstar Kennestone, Atlanta Medical Center Northside, and several Atlanta outpatient surgery centers. Dr. LaCroix is back in the academic field now, in the field of health economics. She's an adjunct professor at the Andrew Young School of Policy Studies at Georgia State, and her research focus is medical liability, patient safety, and physician burnout. She's a member of the American Medical Association, the Medical Association of Georgia, and the Medical Association of Atlanta, and she's on the board of directors. She's tireless and ceaseless in advocacy for good health policy. And Dr. LaCroix, we appreciate the time you give us here at the legislature to serve as Doctor of the Day, but we also want to note for all of those listening that if you or a loved one is facing a surgery, she's happy to speak with you today at the First Aid Center about ways that you can prepare for a surgical procedure that will put you on a pathway to a better outcome for your surgery and healing and health and wellness. So please join me. Dr. LaCroix is here at the back of the chamber. Join me, please, in thanking her for her service.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 5th for a point of personal privilege.
Good morning, Mr. President. Dear colleagues and friends, today I'd like to take a moment to recognize the start of Ramadan, the 9th month of the Islamic calendar. Ramadan is a holy month which Muslims all over the world fast in order to renew themselves spiritually, reflect on their responsibilities to their communities, and take care of the needy. And so I'd like to wish all Muslims in Georgia and all over the world a meaningful and peaceful Ramadan and joyous observance of Eid al-Fitr. Also today, I have the privilege to recognize a very special guest in the gallery, Mr. Tim Maynard, a local Gwinnett entrepreneur, business leader, CEO, philanthropist, and many more. I'm proud to invite him to the chamber along with a couple of my other friends, Sal Ajani, Matthew Reebok, Sean Dupree. If you all can stand, I appreciate it. We actually did a little resolution this week. I'm going to hand it to him a little later on today. And I'd like to ask all of you to join me in giving Mr. Maynard and my friend welcoming round of applause. Thank you, appreciate it. I'll do well.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 9th for a point of personal privilege.
Good morning, members, and happy Sine Die. We've made it to the end, and we won't be seeing each other for a few months, but I'll miss y'all. But anyway, I rise today to just point out to some troubling news that has been in our news cycle, and I saw it again this weekend, but it is concerning the scandal that Justice Thomas and his wife find themselves in over Mrs. Thomas's repeated text to Mark Meadows to take steps to overturn our 2020 presidential election. And now we have questions raised about what Justice Thomas knew about his wife's activities, her radical right insurrectionist activities. And, now it brings attention to January 6th again and the disgrace that it brought to our nation that day as we saw it played out on the news. And many who participated in the insurrection on January 6th have already been charged with a crime against the United States. Justice Thomas himself is finding himself embroiled in this scandal because he is directly involving his court cases and his judgment in those cases in election results. Now, many say, what does Mrs. Thomas's radical right agenda have to do with Justice Thomas? He should be insulated from this, right? But this isn't true. Most legal experts agree that a line has been crossed and Justice Thomas can no longer be impartial. And she has worked directly with the former president of the United States to have influence in the office. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm married. And when you're with your partner, you share most things in your marriage. You share conversations and responsibilities. So Justice Thomas is involved. And a justice with dignity and respect would recuse himself at this time. But he has not done that. Now, few in this chamber, as we passed a bill to honor him in a monument, felt that my view was too strident, even though I spoke truths and facts from this podium. And I know, I get it, truth is hard. It is really hard. But we shouldn't deal in pettiness or erect monuments to figures who may not represent the values of our great state. And that's exactly what I was pointing out. I yield well.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 3rd for a point of personal privilege.
H.R. 158 is a resolution recognizing the Okefenokee Swamp and its importance to Georgia. I want to give you a few points about that. The Okefenokee Swamp is the largest blackwater wetland in North America and one of Georgia's 7 natural wonders. The swamp spans 438,000 acres with 93% protected as the Okefenokee National Wildlife Reserve. The Okefenokee is visited by 650,000 tourists annually, generating $64.7 million annually for the economics of Ware, Clinch, and Charlton counties. It also generates about 750 swamp tourist-related jobs. As members of this body, we should recognize the importance of the Okefenokee Swamp in Georgia and encourage efforts to protect the Okefenokee Swamp and promote it as a national tourism destination. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Chair recognizes the senator from the 44th for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. On April the 4th, 1968 was a somber moment for many of us. The civil rights and social justice advocate of nonviolent protests that instituted the principles of Mahatma Gandhi, a passive resistance, died. He died, but his dream of a fair and just society did not die. Dr. King had a dream, and he's famous for that "I Have a Dream" speech. But he also called out America on that day in August. He called out America, who had given black folk an insufficient check. 400 years of slavery, Jim Crow, and lynching. He sought to make this country better. Although Dr. King lived in a modest house over in the black community there on Sunset, he pushed for fair housing for everyone, voting rights, and poor people and mothers having babies would have decent medical care. He received over 600 honorary degrees and hundreds of thousands of dollars for people who just wanted the movement to succeed, and he gave it all back to the movement and all back to the civil rights movement. Jesus died so that we might have a right to the tree of life. And I am convinced that Dr. King died so that we as black people and poor people might have a right to freedom, justice, and equality for all. The pastor talked to us today and told us about love and told us about doing the right thing and treating people right. So if we're going to do the right thing, one of the things we need to do is to help the blind and visually impaired. 250,000 people in that community, and sometimes we only have 2 counselors, sometimes 6. But as a state, we need to do better. We need to create the commission for the blind and visually impaired. We can't just pass a bill here in the Senate and then run over to the House and try to get the House members to stop it. Or even if it passed the House, want to go to the governor and tell him to veto it. We need to do the right thing in this General Assembly. Mr. President, I yield the well.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 2nd for a point of personal privilege.
Good morning, colleagues. Today is April 4th, and it's truly a wonderful day today. My daughter, Leah Jackson, today is her 22nd birthday, and there's no greater joy than a guy can have than have beautiful children. And Leah's the third of my 4 children, and she is really remarkable. So I want to say happy birthday to my darling daughter, Leah Jackson. But other colleagues, we have the opportunity to do something great this morning. We have the unique ability to recognize and commend the world champion, Evander Holyfield, as a Georgia Senate Ambassador of Goodwill. He reigns as the undisputed champion in both the cruiserweight and heavyweight division, being the first and only boxer to do so. If you don't know him, let me tell you something about him. Evander Holyfield is the 4-time world heavyweight champion of the world. He's won the heavyweight championship 3 times. He has a record of 44, 10, and 2. On June 11th, 2017, he was inducted into the International Boxing Hall of Fame, a Georgia citizen. But we know him as a boxer, but I want to tell you something about his foundation. He inspires young people with his foundation. He encouraged those to achieve not only in the playground, but in the classroom. He's a spokesman for the Boys and Girls Club internationally. He motivates young people to make a difference, not just in themselves, but in this community. Evander Holyfield is a world champion in the hearts and minds of all Georgians. But more than that, he is something that we can look at and want to be. Evander Holyfield is just a champion in the hearts of Americans. He's accompanied today by his first boxing coach, Richard Halliburton, who trained him and motivated him early in his life. Just one of his coaches to change his life. But he went on not only to change Evander's life, but to change the lives of many, many boxers and citizens. Also with him is another outstanding Georgia citizen and another ambassador, Otis Nixon, who has a very similar foundation. You might not remember Otis Nixon, but if you know anything about the Braves, if you know anything about the world champion Braves, the true champion started it all. Is right over there, Otis Nixon. A Georgia Goodwill ambassador, these two men has changing the lives of Georgians every day. I would like to recognize the world champion Evander Holyfield and Atlanta Braves and Atlanta Braves legend Otis Nixon. Mr. President, I yield the well.
The chair recognizes the Dean of the Senate for a point of personal privilege.
Good morning. Thank you very much, Mr. President. I just wanted to take this occasion to remember a great leader who preached nonviolence and became one of the premier, if not the premier, civil rights leader of our era in this country, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And I want to bring it up by remembering a certain incident that occurred to me when I was a very young person in Montgomery, Alabama. Dr. King lived on Jackson Street. And we lived in the Trentham Court area, and this was a particular night when there was a bombing at his parsonage or at his house on Jackson Street. And we as children, we didn't have cell phones and things like that, but we got the word out, and everybody sort of got together, the young kids, and most of the young people got the word out that, hey, something had happened. They bombed Dr. King's house. So we got together, 10, 11, 12 years old, and we ran from our house to his house on Jackson Street. And when we got there was a mob forming, a mob of people, a crowd of people, and they were all concerned about the safety of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. So what happened was, after a while, people were changing their mood. They were getting into a more, they were reaching for anger. They were angry that their leader had been attacked. So after a short while, a small man came out, small voice, and came out and spoke to the crowd and said, "You know me, that I'm nonviolent. My family is mostly unharmed, just frightened." Those were his basic words. And asked the crowd to dissipate and go home and be with their families because he was going to be all right because God had his back. And that was a lesson the first time I met Dr. King, who preached staunch nonviolence, and ironically at that time was visited by senseless violence. His whole life was about nonviolence, but ended on this day with a very violent and senseless act. So I just wanted to pay tribute to that particular time in his life and in my life. And ironically, I was married in this church on Dexter Avenue in Montgomery. But anyway, Dr. Martin Luther King, we salute you. God bless. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Chair recognizes the senator from the 37th for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to take this opportunity to thank my Senate colleagues, both present and past, for allowing me to serve with you for the last 12 years. It's been one of the most meaningful experiences of my life. I want to thank the Lieutenant Governor for your kindness, and I've really enjoyed serving with you in this role. I think we have a lot of good young leadership coming up in the Senate, and I'm encouraged about the future for the state of Georgia. I want you to help me welcome my family that's in the balcony on the right-hand side. I look forward to spending time with them, and I think they look forward to spending time with me. With that, I'll yield the wheel. Thank you all so much.
Senator, you've done a great job and been a great friend to all of us in this chamber, and you work as hard and as diligently as every person in your district expects you to. Thank you for your service. Chair recognizes the senator from the 54th for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. Friends, it's my honor to let everyone know that, I know we had a Dalton Day this year, and everybody looks forward to the rugs that everyone gets for Dalton Day, but I was told last week that the good folks back in Dalton wanted to make sure that everybody in the legislature got another rug to honor the special occasion of the University of Georgia winning the national championship. So everyone will be getting a Georgia National Championship rug. And Lieutenant Governor, I'll make sure, even though you're Georgia Tech, I'll make sure you get the first one. And I also want to take the opportunity while I've got the well. We don't go into April very often, so I don't get these opportunities, but I want to take this opportunity because 32 years ago today, God gave my wife and I our own very own angel, and the birth of my baby girl, my daughter, Heather. And she's the one that just made a young 25-year-old young man realize the value of his own conscience, and realizing the value of a book and what it meant to the future. She gave me the sense of understanding of what the word posterity means. And if we would all commit ourselves to our actions and our efforts, not for ourselves, but solely for the sake of our posterity, for those generations that will come after us, we find that we have no reason to argue and fight anymore. Today is my daughter's birthday, and I just want to say, Heather, I love you. Happy birthday, and you'll always be Daddy's baby girl. On top of that, I want to add one more. Because 36 years ago, 1 week from today, I had been to Fort Irwin, California for 2 months in the Army, desert training. And this is back during the Cold War, so everything we're doing is in preparation for that. I came back, and a good friend of mine told me about this little town that he had discovered while I was gone called Benson, North Carolina. And Benson, North Carolina is just this little country town, but it was away from the GI town of Fayetteville. And so we started going to this little country town on Friday and Saturday nights because people would come from it was just farmland. And the people would come from all over just to cruise down the main street of this little town. And it was an opportunity for us to, on the weekends, to feel like we were getting to go home, even though we were still so far away from home. And so on 1 week from today, 36 years ago, on April 11th, is when I met my wife, Angie Payne. She's the love of my life. She's the conduit for every blessing I've known in my life. And I just want to say happy anniversary, baby. I will walk.
Thank you, Senator. Chair recognizes the senator from the 35th for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. 54 years ago was a great day in my family because my sister was born. It was on April 4th, and we were all excited about our little sister. But later that day, we were upset because we found out that my mother's friend who grew up with her on Auburn Avenue here in Atlanta, just about a mile away from where we are right now, a few miles, had been assassinated. And I remember his speech today because he was a great minister, a preacher, a teacher, a drum major for justice, the first Nobel Peace Prize winner that was African American from the state of Georgia. And he was my mother's friend, and I got to know him when I was a small child. So God bless you, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, who made a famous speech where he said 50 years ago, great Americans in whose symbolic shadow we stand today, signed the Emancipation Proclamation. He said this momentous decree came as a great beacon of light and hope to millions of Negro slaves who had been seared in the flames of withering injustice. It came as a joyous daybreak to end the long night of their captivity. But 100 years later, the Negro still is not free. 100 years later, the life of the Negro is still sadly crippled by the manacles of segregation and chains of discrimination. 100 years later, the Negro on a lonely island of poverty is in the midst of vast ocean of material prosperity. He went on with his famous speech, I Have a Dream. And I want to live my life trying to realize that dream and live that dream. And many of us stand on his shoulders, not just black people, but we all. In fact, the first time I got elected back in the 90s, and I was here for 8 years and left for another 8 years to come back, the young man who we just honored, Evander Holyfield, who is also my church member of World Changers, was living in my district. And I had the honor with all of the Senate of naming the street that he lived on, Evander Holyfield Highway. So I just congratulate him for all that he's done. And thank you very much, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. Your dream lives on. I'll yield the well.
Thank you, Senator. Chair recognizes the pro tem for a point of personal privilege.
That's okay, that's all right. Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, it gives me great pleasure today to recognize a group of visionary and outstanding young women in the metro Atlanta area that are going to have an effect on the state throughout. And the organization is Women Lead Right, and it has a unique energy and passion for the contributions of women in business, in politics, and in life. I think it's fitting and proper that the outstanding leadership of Miss Leah Aldridge, the president, raise your hand, Leah, right over here on the side, Laura Corrigan, and Kimberly Kennedy Ellsbury be recognized for their willingness to step forward and advocate and get recognized the contributions that women have in our business, in our politics, in our leadership, in our government, and in our state. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like for y'all to give them a warm Senate welcome. Thank you very, very much. Thank you. Mr. President, I yield the well.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 14th for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. Although I've already given my farewell, there are a couple individuals that I just want to reach out to and say thank you as that journey started. And it all started years ago when Kara Duke and Jacob Hawkins came to me and asked me to do this and join me walking up and down various neighborhoods and so on, and before long, Josh McCoon jumped in as well. So I'd be remiss to not say thank you for what they've done. But the two biggest ones that I'd like to make sure I recognize is one, Jeremy Morton. Jeremy Morton is the First Baptist Woodstock pastor, but I had the privilege of hiring him when he was in Cartersville, and he came out of Warner Robins. And Jeremy has been that individual that once a month we sit down and we just talk about things. And as I've said before, we all need that individual that will say to you, you might want to pay attention to what you're doing. But lastly, and this is a big one, I think it's fitting having Otis Nixon here, was to my dear friend Bobby Cox. You see, when a group came to me and asked me if I would consider running for the Senate, you know, Bobby didn't vote the same way I did, but I went on bank board and I said, Bobby, I have a question for you. And he said, what is it? I said, the group is asking me to run for Senate. He said, you need to do it. And I said, well, Bobby, I don't know a lot about this. I'm not sure how I'm going to raise money. I'm not sure how I'm going to do any of this. And he said, I'm going to get behind you. And Bobby did radio commercials and did a fundraiser and all that kind of stuff. But the one radio commercial he said just continues to reign true of who Bobby Cox is, who many of us know is just not able to join us out in public. And Bobby said on the radio, when the game's on the line, you need a player you can put the ball in their hand to make sure they win. And Bobby would remind me, no matter how hard it got in life, no how hard it got once we got one down here, that when the ball's in your hand, people are counting on you. And to all of my colleagues here, just remember, there's a whole bunch of people out there just trying to put gas in their car, food on their plate, and they really don't give a whole lot of pay attention. They don't give a rip of what we're doing in here. Just remember that. With that, Mr. President, I yield the well.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 41st, the very patient senator from the 41st. I was trying to systematically walk my way up, but I failed miserably.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise today to celebrate 11 years of marriage. Some 11 years ago, my now wife and I flew to Iowa to get married. What we tell people is we eloped, but what was more true is that we had to fly to Iowa to get married because that was a state that would allow two women to get married. And so now it's quite amazing that I get to stand in this body and serve in this body in a place that 11 years ago would not have recognized my marriage. But now I stand in a body that has not only welcomed me, but has welcomed my spouse, has treated me with great respect and love. And so I am grateful to this body. I'm grateful to the people of Georgia for how far we've come in just one decade, that they would dare to even elect an out lesbian. But more importantly, I want to thank my wife, who stood by me, had this vision and dream alongside of me that I could run for office, that I could run as my authentic self, and that I could even be elected. But more importantly, she stood alongside me through sickness and health, for better and for worse, for richer and sometimes even poor. And so to Trina, the love of my life, thank you and happy anniversary.
Thank you, Senator. Chair recognizes the senator from the 34th for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Senate. I rise to say thank you. Thank you for not only the recognition of 20 years of service in here, but also thank you for understanding that everybody doesn't have the same health that each of us wants and deserve. I know I've been one of those that has consistently tried to be masked, but I am honored and grateful that we as a body have been testing, and I've tested negative each and every time, trying to stay healthy while we're in this body. So I just want to say thank you for recognizing a colleague who happens to not be as strong as most of you all are and helping me to stay safe. Thank you, Mr. President. I'll yield the will.
You have a consent calendar of privilege resolutions before you. Does any senator wish to remove a resolution from the consent calendar? The chair sees none. Is there objection to adoption of the resolutions on the consent calendar? The chair hears none, and the resolutions on the consent calendar are adopted. Mr. Secretary, can you please read the caption on a resolution?
Senate Resolution 853, a resolution by Senator Mullis of the 53rd, a resolution requesting the City of Ringgold to establish a charter study committee and for other purposes. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 53rd to speak to the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President. This resolution is simply a privilege resolution I'll use as a study committee to look at the charter of the City of Ringgold. There's a little lack of leadership there, and we're going to come together and try to figure out what we need to do. That's all this is. I appreciate your support. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the way.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the resolution? Senator from the 53rd has asked for what purposes the senator from the 7th rise?
Mr. President, the appropriate time, which I would think is now, I would like to ask unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 2nd and from the 25th for business inside the Capitol.
Without objection, the senators from the 2nd and the 25th are excused. The senator from the 53rd has asked for unanimous consent that the resolution be adopted. Is there objection? The chair hears none, and the resolution is adopted. Are there any motions to withdraw and commit? The chair sees none. We're now going to move on to the agrees and disagrees that are on your desk, labeled list number 1. We'll have a series of lists that appear throughout the day. We will start with list number 1. Chair recognizes the senator from the 52nd. He must be getting a cup of coffee. Chair now recognizes the senator from the 18th for a motion.
Mr. President, I move that the Senate agree to the House substitute to SB 534.
Ms. Secretary, please read the caption.
Senate Bill 534, a bill by Senators Kennedy of the 18th and others, a bill to be entitled Act to amend Title 50 of the OCGA relating to state government so as to provide certain procedural requirements and considerations for the adoption of rules by state agencies that are applicable to charitable organizations and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Government Affairs recommends that this do pass by committee substitute. Mr. President, the House offers the following substitute to Senate Bill 534, a bill to be entitled Act to amend Title 50 of the OCGA relating to state government so as to provide certain procedural requirements and considerations for the adoption of rules by state agencies that are applicable to charitable organizations and for other purposes. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 18th to speak to his motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, colleagues. Senate Bill 534 is the bill that we passed, I think, with significant, if not unanimous support. We might have had a few votes short of being unanimous. That helps strengthen the way that charities in Georgia operate. You'll remember it basically says that the regulatory burden on charities, especially coming out of COVID-19 for the past 2 years, where their resources are stretched, that the regulatory burden on those type entities should not be anything more than what we, the legislature, decide they are. The House substantially agreed with that, but you'll find basically in lines 50 through line 66, some basic changes that added some language regarding absent a showing of compelling state interest to not impose any annual filing, and also some notice provisions. Importantly, the Secretary of State's office showed up at the hearing with the House and was supportive of this, so that I think basically all the stakeholders, in fact, are supportive of the House version, and I would recommend it to you and ask for your favorable support. Mr. President, I'll be happy to answer any question, or I'll yield the will.
You don't appear to have any questions.
Thank you.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the motion? The chair sees none. The senator from the 18th has moved that this Senate agree to the House substitute to Senate Bill 534. All those in favor vote yea. Opposed, nay. The Secretary will unlock the machine. On the motion, the yeas are 51, the nays are 0, and the Senate has agreed to the House substitute to Senate Bill 534. Chair recognizes the senator from the 52nd. I told him you were getting a cup of coffee.
Mr. President, I move that the Senate insist on its substitute to House Bill 1437.
Ms. Secretary, please read the caption.
House Bill 1437, a bill by Representatives Blackman of the 146th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 7 of Title 48 of the OCGA relating to income taxes so as to revise the rates of taxation on income and for other purposes. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Would the senator from the 52nd like to speak to his motion? He waves. Senator from the 52nd has moved that this Senate insists on its position to substitute House Bill 1437. Is there objection? The chair hears none, and this Senate has insisted on its position. Chair recognizes the senator from the 29th.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the Senate accept the House's agreement on SB 116.
Mr. Secretary, please read the caption.
Senate Bill 116, a bill by Senators Robertson of the 29th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 1 of Chapter 5 of Title 49 of the OCGA relating to children and youth services so as to provide for registration of maternity supportive housing residences to provide housing for pregnant women and for other purposes. Mr. President, the House offers the following substitute to Senate Bill 116, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 1 of Chapter 5 of Title 49 of the OCGA relating to children and youth services so as to provide for registration of maternity supportive housing residences to provide housing for pregnant women and for other purposes. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 29th to speak to his motion.
Colleagues, SB 116 is a piece of legislation that passed out of here. It gives pregnant females who have no place to live an opportunity to provide shelter for themselves and their children if they have any. And one thing that the House added into it is the ability for the mothers and their children to partner up with wraparound services and other agencies within the community. Even though the property that they're living in is operated by a nonprofit, they're still able to go out and take the opportunity to connect with those other services available within the community that are provided by the state. And if there are no questions, I'll yield the well.
You don't appear to have any questions. Any other senator wish to speak for or against the motion? The chair sees none. The senator from the 29th has moved that the Senate agrees to the House substitute to Senate Bill 116. All those in favor vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. On the motion, the yeas are 32, the nays are 22, and the Senate has agreed to the House substitute to Senate Bill 116. Chair recognizes the distinguished Rules Chairman for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate agree to the House substitute for Senate Bill 345. Did that show enough?
Well done. That's a lot of emotion. Ms. Secretary, please read the caption.
Senate Bill 345, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 1 of Title 50 of the OCGA relating to general provisions regarding state government so as to prohibit state and local governments from mandating vaccine passports and for other purposes. Mr. President, the House offers the following substitute to Senate Bill 345, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 1 of Title 50 of the OCGA relating to general provisions regarding state government so as to prohibit state and local governments from mandating COVID vaccine passports and for other purposes. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the distinguished chairman from Chickamauga to present what will probably be a long list of motions today, the first.
Should I start crying now, Mr. President, or wait a little while? I'll wait a little while. Ladies and gentlemen, this is simple. The House has added the third-party contractors that are working in the Georgia medical industry. That's it, as being exempt from this. Other than that, we're still mandating that the government can't mandate a COVID vaccine unless you're in the medical field. And this adds to the medical field of third parties that are involved. That's all, Mr. President. I'll be glad to yield the well for questions or just get out of the well.
Your peers have selected B. There are no questions. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the motion? The chair sees none. The senator from the 53rd has moved that the Senate agrees to the House substitute to Senate Bill 345. All those in favor vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. On the motion, the yeas are 34, the nays are 20, and the Senate has agreed to the House substitute to Senate Bill 345. Chair recognizes the senator from the 56th for a motion.
Mr. President, I move the Senate agree to the House substitute to Senate Bill 330 as amended by the Senate.
Mr. Secretary, please read the caption.
Senate Bill 330, a bill by Senators Albers of the 56th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Title 33 of the OCGA relating to insurance so as to prohibit insurers from canceling, modifying coverage, refusing to issue, or refusing to renew life insurance policies solely because the applicant or insured donated a liver or kidney and for other purposes. Mr. President, the House offers the following substitute to Senate Bill 330, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Title 33 of the OCGA relating to insurance so as to prohibit insurers from canceling, modifying coverage, refusing to issue, or refusing to renew life insurance policies solely because the applicant or insured donated a liver or kidney and for the purposes. Mr. President, Senator Albers of the 56 offers the following amendment to amend Senate Bill 330 by replacing lines 1 through 20 with the following. To amend Title 33 of the OCGA relating to insurance so as to prohibit insurers from canceling, modifying coverage, refusing to issue, or refusing to renew life insurance policies solely because the applicant or insured donated a liver, pancreas, kidney, intestine, lung, or bone marrow and for other purposes. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 56th to speak to his motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senators, this is just restoring the giving the gift of life language back onto Senate Bill 330 that we've passed twice before. I'd ask your favorable consideration. I yield the will.
Senator has yielded the well very quickly. Does any of the senator wish to speak for or against the motion? The chair sees none. The senator from the 56th has moved that the Senate agrees to the House substitute to Senate Bill 330 as amended by the Senate. All those in favor vote yea. Opposed, nay. The Secretary will unlock the machine. On the motion, the yeas are 53, the nays are 0, and the Senate has agreed to the House substitute to Senate Bill 330 as amended by the Senate. Chair continues to recognize the senator from the 56th for a motion.
Mr. President, I move the Senate agree to the House substitute to Senate Bill 333.
Mr. Secretary, please read the caption.
Senate Bill 333, a bill by Senator Albers of the 56 and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Part 1A of Article 7 of Chapter 3 of Title 20 of the OCGA relating to non-public post-secondary educational institutions, so as to remove provisions related to agents and agents' permits, to repeal definitions of such terms, and for other purposes. Mr. President, the House offers the following substitute to Senate Bill 333, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Part 1A of Article 7 of Chapter 3 of Title 20 of the OCGA relating to non-public post-secondary educational institutions, so as to remove provisions related to agents and agents' permits, to repeal definitions of such terms, to provide for new exemptions from applicability of the part relating to certain programs for industry-specific certifications and certain short courses, and for other purposes. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 56 to speak to the motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. We passed Senate Bill 333, which is the cleanup bill for the Georgia Non-Post-Secondary Education Commission. In haste, we forgot to update the caption, and it's simply the updating of the caption of the bill. No material changes. Great bill to provide transparency and support our students. If there are no questions, I would yield the will.
You have no questions.
Thank you.
Any other senator wish to speak for or against the motion? The chair sees none. The senator from the 56 has moved that this Senate agree to the House substitute to Senate Bill 333. All those in favor vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. On the motion, the yeas are 54, the nays are 0, and the Senate has agreed to the House substitute to Senate Bill 333. Chair recognizes the senator from the 47th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate agree to the House substitute to Senate Resolution 596.
Ms. Secretary, please read the caption.
Senate Resolution 596 by Senators Ginn of the 47th and others, a resolution honoring the life and memory of Mr. Isaiah Berry and dedicating an intersection in his memory and for other purposes. Mr. President, the House offers the following substitute to Senate Resolution 596, a resolution dedicating certain portions of the state highway system to provide for an effective date to repeal conflicting laws and for other purposes. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 47th to present the motion.
Morning, ladies and gentlemen. Said this is your annual road naming bill. Said where we're naming intersections and honoring those great Georgian citizens. If there's no questions, I'll yield the will.
You have no questions. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the motion? The chair sees none. The senator from the 47th has moved that the Senate agrees to the House substitute to Senate Resolution 596. All those in favor vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. On the motion, the yeas are 50, the nays are 0, and the Senate has agreed to the House substitute to Senate Resolution 596. Chair recognizes the senator from the 51st.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate agree to the House, I'm sorry, hold on one second. All right, I move that the Senate agree to the House substitute to Senate Bill 558 as amended by the Senate.
Mr. Secretary, can you please read the caption and the amendment?
Senate Bill 558, a bill by Senator Gooch of the 51st and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 2 of Title 32 of the OCGA relating to the Department of Transportation so as to amend notice provisions relative to meetings for the selection of board members, to provide for negotiations and request for proposals related to public-private partnerships and for other purposes. Mr. President, the House offers the following substitute to Senate Bill 558, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Title 32 of the OCGA relating to highways, bridges, and ferries so as to amend notice provisions relative to meetings for the election of board members, to provide for negotiations and request for proposals relative to public-private partnerships and for other purposes. Mr. President, Senator Gooch of the 51st and others offer the following amendment to amend the House substitute to Senate Bill 558 by replacing lines 4 through 6 with the following: partnerships, to amend limitations relating to use of alternative contracting methods, to amend weight and dimension requirements for modular unit transporters and for other purposes. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 51st to speak to the motion and to the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senators, this is a housekeeping bill, GDOT language we do every year. The House has a version, the Senate has a version. The changes that we're making is we're adding two provisions. Section 3, you will see lines 10 through 20. It's just some cleanup language on the construction design build process, the procurement process. And then in Section 5, deals with the fact that coroners are sometimes delayed in responding to fatalities on the interstate highways. This allows the coroners to designate medical personnel to pronounce the person dead on the scene so they can move the body and move the vehicles off the interstates a little more expeditiously. Mr. President, I'm happy to take questions or yield for the vote.
You don't appear to have any questions. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the motion or the amendment? The chair hears none. First, we'll take up amendment number 1. Is there objection to? The way the motion was phrased is we can just take up the vote. The senator from the 51st has moved that the Senate agrees to the House substitute to Senate Bill 558 as amended by the Senate. All those in favor vote yea, opposed nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. On the motion, the yeas are 53, the nays are 0, and the Senate has agreed to the House substitute to Senate Bill 558 as amended by the Senate. All right, I'd like to call your attention that the budget has been on your desk since 10:03, so we're approaching the 2-hour window. Just wanted to make sure that you have a copy of that budget on your desk. What purpose does the senator from the 41st rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. Ask for unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 35th.
Without objection, the senator from the 35th is excused. Chair recognizes the senator from the 19th.
Mr. President, I ask that the Senate agree to the conference report to the House Bill 911, the FY23 budget.
Ms. Secretary, can you please read that caption?
Mr. President, the Committee of Conference on House Bill 911 recommends that both the House of Representatives and the Senate recede from their positions and that the attached Committee of Conference substitute to House Bill 911 be adopted. Respectfully submitted, Senator Tillery of the 19th District Chairman and others. The Conference Committee substitute to a bill to be entitled an act to make and provide appropriations for the state fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2022 and ending June 30th, 2023, to make and provide such appropriations for the operation of the state government and its departments, boards, bureaus, commissions, institutions, and other agencies for the university system, common schools, counties, municipalities, and political subdivisions, for all other governmental activities, projects, and undertakings authorized by law and for other purposes. That completes the order, Mr. President.
The chair recognizes the senator from the 19th, our distinguished appropriations chairman, to present this year's budget.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the Senate, House Bill 911, the Conference Committee report on this year's FY23 budget. First of all, thank you so much for allowing me to operate and work on your behalf for all of your districts, and thank you to the conferees, the senator from the 49th and the senator from the 30th, for their help and input as well. Appreciate the work of the subcommittee chairs. We did everything we could in this conference committee report to hold the priorities of your subcommittees and also the priorities of your district. I want to hit a few of the highlights really quickly. Many of the major things, as I said before when I presented the Senate budget, stayed the same from the governor's original report. $5,000 raise for all state employees, pay raise for teachers, $2,000 to meet the governor's commitment to raise teacher pay by $5,000 in his first term. Austerity restored in the QBE formula and student growth fully funded in the USG and the TCSG programs. The Senate had several priorities that you know. When I spoke to you early on, I told you 3 words summarized those priorities: quality, stewardship, and fidelity. You'll see that the Senate was able to hold on many of those priorities. On quality and CSB's, Community Service Boards for Mental Health, the Senate did alter slightly with the help of our friends across the hall in the House to a BHCC model, which is a behavioral health crisis center model that we're seeing the feds are funding at a different rate. What we did is took our quality money and moved it over to meet that new funding formula that we're seeing being developed in Washington to help our local boards be able to align better as federal funds may become more available. We were able to hold in quality on our provider rate increases. This allows us to move to value-based purchasing, which has been a big priority of the senator from the 11th, among others, as we work to make sure that doctors and providers are paid for their outcomes, not necessarily their inputs. We were also able to pivot slightly on our priority of third grade reading. You know that we had put a ton of money into the budget. Third grade reading is a great prognosticator for what we will need for prisons and DJJ facilities in decades to come. We were not able to hold our monies in that. We were able to start a great discussion about quality overall in education, and I think you're going to see that conversation continue into the summer, and really appreciate the governor's office and his staff for meeting us on that priority. We were also able to hold the Senate priority on DFACs and our SAGs. You know we have a backlog right now in dependency cases. We've talked extensively about that. I want to commend a a certain SAG, I believe her last name was Brown from Fulton County, who provided some tangible language that we included in a bill on Friday to help move those cases as well. But by tying certain parts of funding to movement of those cases, we believe that that backlog could potentially be worked out even by this summer. On the issue of stewardship, the senator from the 26th has made it very clear that Middle Georgia and their issues with medical examiners is an issue for our state. And the senator from the 26th insisted that we include funding in this budget to not only help alleviate the backlog we had seen in medical examiners' offices, but that backlog be alleviated particularly in Middle Georgia and Macon, and the Senate's special project at Macon held by funding staff and death investigators there. On the GNETS program, many of you spoke to us. The providers for GNETS could not have been better to work with. They approached this issue understanding where the Senate was coming from with a variety of issues that have come down the pike on affecting the GNETS program. They were able to meet with us to help address our concerns, and you'll see that this year's budget restores GNETS to the same way it was funded last year, with a caveat that language is included that we need to work out this issue over the next 365 days. Those providers have committed to do so, and I really appreciate the strong conversations that we were able to have with them as we advance the Senate priority and at the same time to work to not cause dishevelment or other unintended consequences across the state. On the issue of fidelity, the Senate held our commitment to funding formulas. As I've mentioned already, fully funding the teaching formula, but also funding the skilled nursing facilities payments in Department of Community Health at the 2020 rates. The only break in that is a 20% increase to the 2020 rate for skilled nursing facilities concerning ventilators, which is really a nuanced issue, but it's something that we needed to do because of how Medicaid pays those rates. On bonds, you'll see that the Senate funded many of your priorities, including libraries in Bryan County, the East Side Athens branch, the McDonough Public Library in Henry County, $7.5 million for upgrades at Savannah State, $6.5 million for the Wilder Hall in renovation at Georgia Military College in Milledgeville, technical college improvements at Coastal Pines in Brunswick, West Georgia Technical College in LaGrange, Purcell Hall at North Georgia Technical College, and land acquisition at Piedmont Technical College in DeKalb County. The Conference Committee report also funds 2 new college and career academies. One issue that I left to the end, I didn't leave out, is a huge priority that the Senate had as well concerning now-comp waivers. The now-comp waiver position of the Senate is reflected in the Senate's Conference Committee report, and we held strong to that, and the House met our position there. Last but certainly not least, the senator from the 15th brought up the state's commitment to sickle cell, and you'll see that that funding has also been included and doubled in the Conference Committee report, and appreciate the senator from the 15th's work there. Senators, again, thank you so much for your help on developing this year's budget. I want to prepare you, though. While the FY23 has allowed us to fund many of the priorities of this body and priorities of the state, we have to be very prudent to realize that as we continue to pass additional legislation, that we may be in a position where the 24 does not look the same. The storm clouds are on the horizon concerning economic conditions, and we need to know that and be honest with our constituents as we approach the next 12 months. Thank you so much again for your help on developing this budget. I would be remiss if I didn't give one more shout out to our Senate Budget Director, Melody Debussy, for her, I believe, 25th budget. And Melody, thank you again for all the years you've put in. We know that Martha Wigden in the House is leaving, Chairman Terry England's leaving, but most importantly, to our body, we're going to miss you a ton, and thank you so much for your service. Mr. President, if there are no questions, I'll yield the well and ask for favorable consideration to the Conference Committee report to House Bill 911.
You just explained $30 billion really well, and you have no questions.
Thank you, Mr. President.
And I want to echo the comments about Melody. Thank you so much for all that you've done for us. You've been an amazing leader through this entire process in my 4 years being here, and have really always put the Senate in a great position, but have put 11 million Georgians in an even better position. Thank you for your work. Is there any other senator that would like to speak for or against the motion? The chair sees none. Senator from the 19th has moved that the Senate adopts the conference committee report on House Bill 911. All those in favor vote yea, opposed nay. The Secretary will unlock the machine. On the motion, the yeas are 53, the nays are 0, and the Senate has adopted the conference committee report on House Bill 911. Chair recognizes the senator from the 19th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Is this the time you wanted me to move adjourn sine die?
I'm seeing a lot of nods. I like your thinking. All right, we're gonna pause for lunch here at the ripe hour of 12:10. We're gonna come back at 2 o'clock. We've got a number of people that want to attend the governor's bill signing on House Bill 1013, which I believe is at 1:30. So we're gonna break till 2 o'clock for lunch, and then come back. So the Senate will stand at ease until 2 o'clock. Lunch is in the Secretary of the Senate's office down at the end of the hall.